So, hi, Kate Ertmann. I own an animation company. 3D animation is the core of what we do. We do lots of different types of animation, though, work with lots of different types of clients. But one of the things we've been doing a lot lately is this thing, Ethnographic Animation. And I'm really excited to share a bit of that with you, as well as show you stuff that we haven't done, but other people have done, how actually this has been going on for many, many years. But before I get into all of that, these are my parents. So I think it's good to know where I'm coming from so you have an idea of why you want to listen to me at all. So it's kind of hard with those windows, but hopefully you can see a bit. That's my mom on the left. That's Mary Jo. And on the right is John, my dad. They met at CBS in the early 50s, so at the dawn of television. My mom was a producer. My dad was a director, eventually became a director. He's a cameraman there. But this gives you a little hint of what the environment I grew up in, which is jumping into things when it's a shiny little thing over there, and I want to try that. So my parents had experience in theater, but when my dad came out of World War II, a buddy of his said, "You want to try this newfangled thing called TV?" My dad was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll try it." And then it became his career for the next 40 years. So my parents. And then many years later, I was born. I grew up in New York, and I was a professional child actor. So I actually did a bunch of commercials and television, soap operas, a whole bunch of stuff. And I am on the right there. Cute little wig on. This is an independent film. It's called Pop. You can get it on Netflix. It's a screwball comedy about two physicists. And I played Five, the girl from Mars who likes martinis. And I chose this little still image just to say that a lot of times I feel like an alien in the industry that I work in, just because, besides the fact that 3D animation is still a relatively new industry, I'm not an animator. I do not know how to animate at least computer graphics. But I work with a ton of animators, and I got interested in animation because growing up doing production and being involved in film and video and commercials, and my degrees in radio, television, broadcasting, which is also kind of obsolete now, at least the way I learned it, I was always interested in what's over there and what can I do. So I worked with a whole bunch of Laserdisc production, these big things 20 years ago. And then I got into all the World Wide Web and streaming media. And it was when I was working and producing a bunch of infomercial production, which there was a ton of it in the 90s in Portland. I wanted to figure out a way to show something. We had these half-hour shows that were infomercials, and I wanted to figure out a way to show how things worked. And so I'd work with animators, and I kind of got so interested that I ended up becoming a partner at a company, and as Jeff mentioned, 15 years later, I'm still doing it. So that's my brain. So we're going to talk about today what is animation, to make sure we're all starting on the same kind of base here, and all agreeing on that. And then I will take that and throw it away and tell you how it's changed in the past 5-10 years. We'll talk about ethnographic animation, what it's about, how do you use it, how it's a tool, how it can scale through a product continuum. And then we'll have a fight club, because you should get up and move around, because everyone's sitting a lot today. And we'll split into two sides, and we'll lock the doors, and it's going to be exciting. And then at the end, you'll have 3 things to remember about animation. So when you walk out of here and someone says, "What did you go see?" and "Who did you hear?" hopefully you'll be able to repeat a few little key thoughts. So we move on. What is animation? Is it a mouse and some dwarves and a bunch of talking toys? Perhaps. So animation, cartoons started. The first one was this Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie short cartoon that was before a film in 1928, I believe, called Gang War. That movie did not do well, but everybody came out of the theater truly talking about this wacky little mouse walking on its back legs, dancing on the ship, and it made people laugh. And they thought it was so much fun. They'd truly never seen this before. The funnies had come to life, the Sunday funnies. And they kept talking about it, and that progressed to 1937, Snow White, Seven Dwarfs. If you haven't seen this in a while, please rent it, buy it, stream it, I don't care what. If you have children especially, this is a beautiful piece of storytelling. Not just visually, but the cast of characters. And this is the first full-length animated film. The cast of characters, their backstories actually, the emotions that were elicited from, with the audience watching it, you could identify with different characters. You'd say, "My Uncle Joe, he's grumpy, so like Grumpy." And you have, when something bad happens to a character, you react, and you don't care that it's not real, it's not a real actor. You just know that it's a really good piece of storytelling. And then we jump ahead. We jump ahead to 1985 with Dire Straits, Money for Nothing. First, all CG, all computer graphic video. And then 10 years later, of course, Toy Story. One of the most successful movies of all time, one of the most successful franchises of all time, let alone animated. And there we really identify with the storytelling, with the characters. All ages identify, both adults and children. So there you go with just a little background. That is animation and how it's evolved. This is why animation is not animation anymore. And it's because of the Don. This is the Don. The Don is a 3D animator. He works at my shop. On the left, which you can kind of see, he's at work. And on the right is a fantastic picture of Don at Burning Man. I love the scope of Don. Don is Gen Y. Don is a voracious reader. He is always has a book in his coat. When he's on the bus, he's pulling it out, reading. He plays a lot of video games. He's a fantastic animator, really good at technology. And Don is a really good representation of not being overwhelmed or not even thinking about the difference, even as an animator, the difference between animation and real action. Because when he looks at it, it's just a communication device. It's just a way to tell a story. It could be a banner ad that's animated, but it's just movement, it's media. And more, not just with my generation, Gen X, or baby boomers, or Gen Y, or the ones that are coming up after that, we're all kind of really, we don't see the line in between the animation and the real actors anymore. I mean, we know it. We're not stupid. But we don't differentiate it as much, and we just accept it as a way to communicate. So that's why animation isn't animation anymore. And more it's being used as a tool in education, in schools, in studies. So really quick here, a few little bit of research here. SANS Research did a study on neuromarketing. And neurocinema, actually. And they said that animation can be more engaging for the brain than real actors. Okay, so now we're comparing the two, but we're saying with animation, why is it that you're understanding more than if someone was standing there talking, or if you have a video that is of real people out on the street, kind of a real person kind of thing. Journal of Science Teaching says significantly higher conceptual understanding when you use animation. This was from a organic chemistry class or a school. And they were studying when people were just listening to a lecture or if they had a supplement of animation showing whatever it was that they were learning in organic chemistry. So people would have a higher conceptual understanding, which I think is a really important word to use there. Riyadh Technical College, animations that convey mechanistic descriptions. This was another science class. Where these students actually had a text, they had a choice of lecturer only, lecturer textbook, or lecturer textbook animations. And they were able to really understand a process much more by having it be animated. Because it's something that they wouldn't be able to show on video, really. And the Journal of American Osteopathic Association says comprehension was markedly higher for students who use computer animation. Again, very similar. I'm not sure if this was a science class or not, but again, it was in teaching it in education. So, you can't see that, can you? Oh, well, okay, I'll run through it fast. What it is, trust me, is some CAD data that we could bring into our 3D software, our entertainment package, I guess you can call it, and be able to show the internal workings of what is a kind of a pickup truck type thing. You could see how the gears can work. Let's see if the next one. That is a windmill. This windmill does not, well, at the time, did not exist, and actually didn't even have the CAD data yet, but they were able to give us dimensions. We can do true dimensions in 3D, and then we're able to enter animation into gaming technology. Unity is a great one because it works really well with 3D, to give it real physics and say, okay, how much pressure on this very particular sized little paddle, how much wind gusts and from what angle, so it would stay stable, so it wouldn't tip over. We could do tests like that. This is another, this is a door hinge on a car, being able to zoom on in and see the movement of the door hinge, which of course you wouldn't be able to do on real action video. So animation can do all those things, but the big thing here, and what leads us to ethnographic animation, is that it can allow you to feel an experience. Think back to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, think back to Steamboat Willie, where all of a sudden someone who could be a mouse or it could be a person, but when you can feel an experience, you all of a sudden have this greater connection, and you want to have more visual of that experience. Oh, hello. Next slide. No. So, pause on the animation. Hold those thoughts in your head. Take you to ethnography. Who here, anybody, familiarity with ethnography, works with ethnography? Yes, good, great. So this is one definition. It's a kind of basic definition that it aims to describe the nature of those who are studied. And for those that don't know, ethnography, kind of a subset, kind of works with cultural anthropology. But you go out and you study people doing something right now. Limited interaction, if at all. You watch how someone may go out and shop. You watch how someone might clean their house, how they use a vacuum, how they use a sponge. Many different things. But you just take all that data. A lot of times you have a lot of pictures, photos. You'll have, a lot of lists, a lot of qualitative, quantitative, whole bunch of research. And then what do you do with it? So Kelly Gotu before this had mentioned someone I have the privilege of knowing, Dr. Genevieve Bell, who leads Intel Labs. She's a fantastic cultural anthropologist. She does ethnographic work with Intel. And one of the things that I love that she says is, sure, go and do the ethnographic work, but the whole point of ethnography is to figure out what is the meaning of that afterwards? What do you do with all that data? And so many times you're trying to do research or ethnographic research or market research. And it's all to kind of how Don was saying in the beginning, that it's all to go to the business side and say, this is why I need money to make this. And people have these problems and these challenges. So what we've been doing, and what I will show a few examples, especially from people way before I ever started doing this, is doing this social science storytelling, which is what ethnographic animation is. It's taking the facts and giving a visual to it, and there's ways that you can treat it that gets people to really focus on what you want them to focus on. It's not at all messing with what the facts are, but it's looking at it and saying, okay, here's a way for me to, instead of shoving the stack of papers or all these photos and giving you my opinion on everything, here's what happened. And I can do it and show it to you in a 5-minute time or 10-minute time, and you can get that VP to sign off on that next $50, $100, $1 million, whatever, to invest in your product or to help do the promotion of the product moving forward. So it's about using animation as a development tool, and it's not just a means to tell a story as it was with Snow White, but it's adding onto that and taking to the next level of being a development tool. So, marble answering machine. Does anyone know offhand if they've seen this? Darrell Bishop. This is 22 years old. It's fantastic. I'm just going to let it speak for itself.
PM.
Hi Simon, it's about 1 o'clock now. I was wondering whether you're going to come to the football. It's the weather's a bit wet and rainy, so I understand if you don't. Other than that, well, yeah, give us a ring if you're in. Okay, bye.
PM.
Hi Emma, it's Val.
3:30 PM.
Hello, a message for Simon Phipps. Your flight is BA 6213.
at 12:30, Monday the 15th of October. Your job number is BS 436215, and the pickup address is 44 Camden Mansions, Kensington Mall. Bye.
Oh. 1992.
2:45 p.m.
Hello Simon, it's George. Could you give us a ring? My tone number is... Talk to you later. See you. Bye.
Of course. I love the ellipsis. It's like, is it the end? It may not be the end. I don't know if it's the end. Okay, so that's fantastic. I love watching this because I always think, what do those marbles feel like? Do they have little indentations on it? How does it read? But when I think about it, is that by watching that, you were able to have an opinion about what worked and what didn't work, and it did it in a way that it gave you the time to experience the animation, to experience the phone call, and to experience a message being left, as well as listening to a message. And you weren't jumping ahead and saying, I'm going to make this prototype, and I'm going to build it, and then putting it in front of someone and saying, okay, imagine if, and then that's not a real experience. This is allowing for what perhaps could be a real experience. And what ended up coming out of this is that they didn't make it because of many different things, but one of them was what happens when my 3-year-old gets a hold of the marbles. There also was discussion about what if the dog comes along and swallows a marble, and that would be a mess, and someone wouldn't get a message. So it was a wonderful way to try to experiment, give a true, real experience, real time of what it would be like to use this device. So when I talk about ethnographic animation, you can kind of see there on the side, there are a bunch of blue people. And one of the things that has come out of a lot of ethnographic research that with our clients is they have the data, they show the data to their higher-ups, their partners, whoever it is that they need to share the data with, and they say, they get focused on the strangest things. And this is really what happens, consciously or subconsciously. Someone will say, this is a study on how grandmas write letters to their grandkids. I don't know. And they'll look at it and they'll say, wow, that doesn't look like my grandma. She looks too old to be a grandma. She looks too young to be a grandma. Hey, what shirt? I have that shirt. I think my grandma has that shirt. Is that a plant? That plant looks dead. They should water that plant. And they're not paying attention to anything that you want them to pay attention to. So when using people and trying to show an experience, in this case, they're blue people. You know it's a person, but you're not distracted that it's a person. You know if it's female or male, but you don't know if it's South Korea or South Dakota that they're from. The products are rendered in a very photoreal type of way, so you're watching that interaction, but everything else in the space, the environment, is just suggested, as you can see in this one. This is a study on how people were using a vacuum. They're shadow people. Female, great. Doesn't matter where they're from, what they do. In different ways that they would be using the vacuum, how they would start the vacuum. A lot of people would start the vacuum by stepping on it. It was going to be the next version of this vacuum. The living room is just suggested, and I say living room because I'm making an assumption there, but it's in a house. But you're not distracted if that plant's alive or dead. I mean, you could be, since I'm pointing it out, but really what you're watching is the movement on the screen. The great thing with this isn't just all those items I've said, but also that when you're using any sort of animation to give it a visualization near the front of a production, you can have this great economies of scale because you engage with the client early on in the project, hopefully. A lot of times for us, because ethnographic data and research is still relatively not used as much as I would like it to, we engage in a marketing side, and then we come flipping back on the next project with them and start really early on the product design and process, where we have these great economies of scale of making all these assets, because everybody always asks, how much does this cost? Well, you do spend a bunch of money in front, but it's like making a dollhouse, making a diorama, where then from there on, as you're iterating and trying to figure out more about how to design the product and the experience, you're just making little adjustments, and then you start really saving money because you're doing this prototype of the experience right here in the animation, and then you're just moving pieces around in your diorama. And with some clients, we just have these worlds, and they just call us every couple months and say, hey, we have this new laptop we might be coming out with. They send us the CAD data. They say, use the mom, the dad, and the little dog, and show them in the park. And we say, great. And they give us the whole scenario that they want to show. And then we just plug in the characters and we show what that might look like. All real dimensions, all real physics. This is one example. Let's see if this will play. Yes. I'll just keep hitting it. So this is just showing, this is true dimensions on a woman's hand, woman's wrist, where they were just over and over. You only get to see it once. Hopefully you didn't blink. That's fine. So you could see how it fit over the wrist, how the product would expand. Yes, you can shoot this on video, but could you build this and then call us 6 hours later after we send this to you and say, hey, could you make that product, that band a little bit longer? Can you make it a little bit wider? And we can do that very quickly. And then we can test it again. And what would the experience be if they open the hand more or close the hand up? So now's the part where it gets a little unmeta, I don't know quite what to call this, where I can't show you the awesome, but I'm going to explain it to you. But that's kind of going against the whole thought of ethnographic animation, but we all know about NDAs, so I'm just going to describe it as best as I can. Imagine if there was an appliance in this world, it could be, it's something in public, so it's a fountain drink machine, or it's a ticket dispenser at a train station. And you want to get an idea of how to build that UI. How do you make it for someone who is going to stand in a line, a lot of people, we're out in public, and they're right-handed, and they go through the queue? What if they're left-handed? How do you have to set the buttons differently? What if they have a baby on their hip? That was one that came up a lot. Also, what if you want to make sure it's handicap accessible for in the same line? What if you want to make sure the person can hold onto their walker or be in their wheelchair and still reach the screen? If you create the world all in 3D and animation, you can just keep iterating and iterating over and over again and testing the experience in the animation. Again, it just shows the product continuum that right now what we call ethnographic animation is early on. We also will do animation and other people. Again, we're not the only ones that do this, certainly. But using animation, using illustration, anywhere along the process, because it really, really helps someone comprehend how to have a reaction that you're looking for, as opposed to reading a bunch of data and asking questions about it and then losing the whole point of that we're trying to figure out what is a good experience. Does it work? Obligatory, again, because I can't tell you who we work with, though if you come up afterwards, I might tell you a little something. Oh, look, the 12th man's flying by right now. Oh, that's cool. Distracted. Quotes, things to read. Quotes of some of our clients, Fortune 100 clients, that really, really love this process. And one of the big things that was a huge benefit was that they had a faster time to market on their products. That happens much more often than not. There's another place where in the end, they end up saving money in the long run. Now it's time for Fight Club. Okay, 2 teams. 2 teams will be video and animation. You don't have to fight. I know you're excited too. But I get asked this a lot. Why not just use video? And video is great. It's the world I come from, where I started often. But with video, you can connect with real people. You can do testimonials. You can do man on the street. You can really get someone's immediate reaction, really true. But again, with real people, you have a real demographic. You have a certain age or a certain assumption on age. You certainly have a nationality, a gender. And sometimes that isn't important to the data that you're collecting, nor is it important to what you're trying to express. You can show off your new product. Absolutely, that's great. But what if the product's not made yet? You want to show your product before it even exists. You want to show an idea. You want to show the marble answering machine. You can capture a moment, kind of same thing with like you're interviewing someone. You can see a surprise, see a reaction, which you can recreate in animation certainly, but not always the best place to do it is animation. Sometimes it is video. But once you shoot something on video, then if you want to iterate the product, iterate the experience, iterate the UI, whatever it is, you got to go back and reshoot. And that can become really costly. What if you create the world, a computer-generated world, and you just practice and practice and practice within that animated world? So the 3 things to remember. 1, that animation isn't animation anymore. So when someone asks you what this was about, you say it isn't about cartoons, and it isn't even just about Toy Story. It's about using animation as a tool, because animation is a prototype of the experience. It's actually quite amazing, all the things you can do, especially with physics, what you can do with different dimensions. You can really test and test. It's a development tool, and it scales. So again, you can use the animation right in the beginning, or you can use animation later on the process in marketing, or just in visualization. But if you create those worlds, create those products, you can redo and redo and iterate through the process thereby, ideally, and usually from our experiences with clients, that you can save them money in the end. And I had to do a number 4 because anything is possible. There's tons of stuff I haven't thought of. There's tons of stuff that is out there to look at, but I really, really highly recommend that you look up how animation, how illustration, how any sort of visualization is being used, because I think it's such a powerful tool for all of us to be aware of, as opposed to only looking at data or only looking at words, to really give a visual, because some people just learn better that way. The end. You can reach me at GoKate. You can reach me kate@animationdynamics.com. Please do reach out. I have no idea, because I have no idea if there's time. Looks like we're almost done. Anyone now? Or have a question? Yes.
I love the concept behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits a project I'm currently working on where I've got a vision. The only way I can describe it is to project the entire thing out in one
Yeah.
frame, which is going to take way too long. But I need them to see what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
describe.
Mm-hmm.
How would you recommend somebody who's not an animationist
Mm-hmm.
do this? Like, my first thought was maybe PowerPoint with clip art and automatic screens that progress and a little guide.
Doing GIFs are awesome. So basically taking an illustration, and you can just take a drawing, and there's tons of stuff you can, different apps, different tools online, that you can take a few drawings, and then it'll edit it together. And usually maybe there'll be 3 drawings showing a progression of either a process or an interaction with something. And you can, if you have an illustrator at your disposal, then great, it'll be more developed. But sometimes just having, really simple, it's almost like a storyboard or an animatic, where you just can throw up a bunch of JPEGs of maybe 4, 6, maybe 8 different pictures, throw them into the software, and then have it just play on a loop. And just even that little bit really helps someone comprehend what it is you're trying to show, especially if it's something that is not two-dimensional, if it's more than a UI, if it's something that is a product, the way someone holds something or the way they pick it up. It's a great way to show, to at least start showing something more than writing it down and talking about it. Yes?
I do find it, when you have a prototype, so an animation that's meant to be used, you send it to somebody in email and they're going to look at it on their own time. It needs to be self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
Versus something where you're going to be there.
Yeah, presenting.
To explain and give the context.
Mm-hmm.
What would you do differently?
I hate using text on screen, though of course I did here, but it's necessary sometimes. My recommendation would be to no more than 3 words at a time on screen, so they can just see it out of the corner of their eye what it is that they're watching. I had another thought on that. Of having the words be on screen, I think is really important, as opposed to sending it in a separate document. Because if you got sent a Word doc or some text in the email and you got the attachment and says, watch this movie, you're like, click, click, I want to watch that movie. So if it's important to be able to have some sort of verbal attachment that explains, ideally you don't have to do that, but if you feel you need to, try to incorporate it, or there's ways you can put in a PowerPoint animation, you can put a few words at the bottom. That, making sure you connect those 2 together would be important.
Is there a risk in making it too rich? Because when I think of doing these, I feel it's you're going to create like a haiku. It's going to be short with a lot of layers.
Yeah.
A lot of details. And if they're not there, it may not be clear. Where I was just details where I was just whatever, it's just a real person. Or maybe there was something very subtle, so there were some of those.
Right.
Is there do you have any tips finding the sweet spot in terms of kind of how nuanced it makes?
It goes to knowing your audience. I mean, hopefully it's not someone you've only met once, hopefully, and you don't have to dumb it down for a variety of people in the audience, but if you know that you're talking to a CEO, if you know you're talking to a marketing person, there's great generalities you can kind of make of knowing, or if it's an engineer, or if it is a design person. It will, if you spend the 15 minutes to do a quick history of what is attractive to that type of person, or that person themselves, if you know them really well, it will go so far, so far to being able to be successful. So knowing the, as with animation, knowing the intent, using it as a piece of intention, as opposed to feeling that it's just a mouthpiece for you to be able to describe something, is super important and will take you really a long way if you think about who your audience is on it. Sure.
Do you use it just to present as a presentation tool to stakeholders, or do you sometimes use it also for end user testing?
Yeah, both. We do use for both. So again, what my company does, we're 3D animation studios. So we do content for digital screens. We do a lot of marketing. We do commercials. We do all sorts of things. But so we're not market researchers. We are not ethnographers. We work with those teams and we take their data. So what we found is it works in all stages of a product process. And a lot of times our point of entry ends up being that either a focus group, or we're showing, or it's a marketing piece. And then because they revive that product later on, 6 months, a year later, whatever, they bring us in early on and say, let's reuse those assets. And then, again, they start saving money. Yeah. Awesome. Maybe? Anyone? Time? I think I had a half hour. I'm going to end it because none of us know. So, the end. Thank you.